we have an eminent speaker speaking about definition of ready, definition of done, and acceptance criteria. He intends to do a little deep dive on these three aspects of Agile and Scrum in terms of understanding what is definition of ready, what is definition of done, where would it be used, and what do you mean by acceptance criteria? Is that applicable for a user story? Is that applicable for a project or a product vision? So those kind of things. It is good to get some background music as well. Awesome. Okay, sorry, Ravi, I've muted you, and we'd like to hear your song by the end of the session. Um, so great. I'd like to thank a few people here. Firstly, you guys who have joined our call today, our session today, because without you, the session wouldn't have been possible. So thank you for registering on UVCity and coming in. Secondly, UVCity, I'd like to extend my heartfelt thank you to UVCity because they have been providing us the web hosting or the session hosting platform since a long time, and that you can do it yourself too. If you want to just get in touch with me offline, I can put you through the UVCT.com team, and they can provide you all the details. All right. The flow of our discussion for today is I welcome you like I did, and who we are. Who are we in terms of the group? And we'll get into the speaker introduction, and I'll hand over to the speaker of the day. He will take us through for the next 80 minutes on the topic itself, which is DOR, DOD, and acceptance criteria, a deep dive. And then we get down to a last minute, question and answers and closure. The session is planned to be closing anytime between 80 to 90 minutes from now. Okay. Who are we as APGI, which is Agile Practitioners Group of India? So this group was born in 2015. I am one of the co-founders of the group, and we have other couple of gentlemen who were alongside with me when we said, okay, we need a group in order to spread Agile awareness across city of Pune first, India, and then across the globe. So I think we are slowly getting there. But what we need to essentially do is, try and bring more people in. Today, if you are attending the session, just go ahead and let people know if you think this is going to add value to them and add value to yourselves. You can bring people into it, and that's how we grow as a community. We have done 3 conferences so far, and of course, one which was due in 2020 got cancelled because of pandemic, and that's the reason we have been doing these virtual series for the last 3 months. This is a volunteer-driven group. We are 1,000 plus now. The last time I showed this slide, we were 930 plus, but we've had a few additions, and we have reached 1,000. That's a great milestone for us, our group. And we're extremely proud that Scrum Alliance is supporting us in terms of this is a Scrum Alliance endorsed user group as well, right? So we have many more meetups coming up. So please watch out on UVCT and our APGI Facebook, Twitter, Insta pages for to know more sessions that are coming your way. That's about APGI, and our speaker here today. His name is Sundharesan. Subramaniam, and the gentleman looks exactly like how he is in the photo below. He is an Agile evangelist at TCS, Tata Consultancy Services, and he's been associated with APGI since long. And alongside, he does all sorts of proposal reviewers for conferences that are put up by Scrum Alliance and Agile Alliance. And he is definitely an avid and a passionate Agilist, trying to learn more every day around, the space in the Agile fraternity. And of course, he's a proud member of this very own group. So with that short, light introduction, without any further ado, I'd like to pass on this session to, just before that, in terms of the working agreement for today, All lines will be muted until the question and answer session. Unless you are asked to speak up by the speaker, please go ahead and unmute yourself if you have any kind of experience sharing, ideas, etc. You can enable your videos. There is no mandate. If you can, if not, no worries. And this meeting will be recorded for future playback purposes. If you have any questions in between on the topics that are being covered by the speaker, you can chuck them onto the chat. I will be there as a chat moderator and a facilitator for you today. And of course, we have other experts joining in as well who can respond to your questions on chat. Unless you want to wait for speaker's time, whenever speaker asks you to unmute your line and ask any questions, please feel free to do so. Okay, with that, Sundar, welcome to APGI's session today. Over to you.
Thank you, Sri. Let me share my screen. Let's kick off. Just a second. Okay. Can someone confirm if you can see my slides?
Yep. Yeah, we can.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you, Sri. Thank you again for that introduction. So it's been 14 years. I've been graduated from the college, and I did my bachelor's in electronics and communication engineering. And I've been spending all these 14 years in IT industry from then. And do you believe or not, this is, I think, one of the luckiest generations wherein we see the software development evolution starting from the traditional ways of developing software to the incremental and iterative ways of working, which is so-called the agile software development. So I would always say that we are pretty lucky. So this is Sundharesan Subramaniam. I'm working with Tata Consultancy Services for the last 6 years. And I've been working with different hats as well in terms of Scrum Master, proxy product owner, a development team member, whatnot, and also had great opportunities in terms of working along with the large agile transformation programs as well. And had quite experience working with banking, insurance, and education sector customers as well, helping them building great products. It's been a privilege and a great honor for me to talk to you all and share my knowledge and experience on definition of ready, definition of done, and acceptance criteria in terms of all the valuable knowledge which I have gained so far for the last 6 years I'm associated with Agile software development. Thank you, APGI and UVCT, for providing the great platform to talk to Agile practitioners across globe virtually. Welcome, everyone. Let's begin. So let's start with the flow of work today. So I wouldn't call this an agenda because being all Agile practitioners, so we really wanted to set a cadence for us in terms of how exactly we want to, have our session progressing. So what we're going to talk today. So we're going to talk more about the different Agile frameworks in the industry and where does Scrum stand in the global adoption. And we're going to talk more about a Scrum in a nutshell. So a quick 5 minutes overview about what Scrum is all about. This is to stitch together in terms of where definition of ready, definition of done, and acceptance criteria play a major role. And also we want to take a deep dive in understanding definition of ready and who creates that and what's in it for the development team in crafting the definition of ready. And straight away we move on to the acceptance criteria. What are they in terms of the requirements and who does it and when does it get crafted? And so what is the purpose of the acceptance criteria? And finally, we move on to the last leg of the section, which is definition of done. So this is the flow of work. So moving on to the Agile frameworks, as I said, we want to set a context before we get head on to the definition of ready, definition of done, acceptance criteria. So Agile is being a hotcake all these days, especially with digital transformation and whatnot. The companies and customers are really looking forward to be very competitive in the market. They want to get the products out as swiftly as possible to generate some great value for the customers, thereby the return on investment as well. So we have multiple frameworks in Agile, which enables the customers to build the products with great quality and valuable delivery as well. So to name some of you, we have Scrum, we have Extreme Programming, we have Kanban, we have Lean, and whatnot, the one which you could see on the slide. So different frameworks in different contexts, people are using it to build a valuable product. Why Scrum? So I have chosen Scrum today to give a context about what the session is all about. The reason because the 14th State of Agile report says 58% of global the survey done. So people in teams are using Scrum to build a valuable product. And if you see 58%, along with that, if you see 10% of Scrum ban, so it's really dominating the world. So close to 70% are adopting Scrum framework as their agile software development model. And also, we take this opportunity to congratulate Scrum achieving its 25th anniversary. It's been 25 years now, and I take this opportunity and be very proud to say that happy birthday, Scrum. It's a lot more to come in the coming years. Many people are going to use. People build great products, and these processes, especially Scrum, is going to be a great enabler for them to realize the potential value what they're going to build. Moving on, Scrum in a nutshell. So as I said, we wanted to understand where definition of ready, definition of done, accepting Kriya sits well in. So where all it starts. So if you want to start a product, you need to have someone who owns the goal or a vision. So in Scrum, we have got 3 roles. We've got 5 events and then 3 artifacts. So let's get on to them one by one. 3 roles, when I talk about that, we have a product owner, we have a Scrum master, and a development team. Product owner is the one who owns the vision of a product. As I said, he holds the dollars, basically the return on investment in terms of what they need to invest in everything. So the product owner works collaboratively with the customers or the stakeholders to understand what requirements the customer are looking for to build a valuable product. So the product owner owns the product backlog. So product backlog are list of features or the requirements or whatnot for the product to be built. So everything gets onto the product backlog, which is one of the artifacts. What happens next? So we have a product backlog, which has been prioritized by a product owner, which has very clear or enough information at the top of the priority, which generates some business value. And what happens is the first event in Scrum is a sprint planning. So sprint planning, there are 2 things happens in sprint planning: the what and the how. So when we talk about the what, the product owner and the development team together, they'll be discussing in terms of the priorities of the stories, what they need to play on a particular sprint or an iteration. So in Scrum prescribes that it no more than it's 1 month. The shorter duration is much more beneficial to build a working software. Yeah. So the what part, the product owner and development team together discuss in terms of whatever is being prioritized for the product to be built, and then whatever the team think they can achieve in a particular iteration, which may be 2 weeks or 4 weeks or 1 week, whatever the cadence it may be. They agree with the product owner. They try to pull that in the sprint and then adds in the sprint backlog. So these forms the sprint. They form the sprint goal. Yeah. Once the sprint goal is all been crafted, so we have daily Scrum, which is the 24 hours kind of a cadence where the development team members gather together to understand and synchronize what they have done in the last 24 hours. What are the impediments they have? Is there any challenges for them to achieve the sprint goal? And then they just inspect and adapt. So every event within Scrum is an inspect and adapt opportunity. So once daily Scrum is completed, as I said, it happens every day in the iteration to make sure that as a team, we are moving the goalpost together to achieve the sprint goal. The last but event on Scrum is sprint review. So sprint review is nothing but the team has pulled the user stories or the prioritized items from the product backlog, and then they form the sprint backlog, they build them, and then they have to validate that with what they have built is right. So product owner and the invited stakeholders or these customers, they will be part of the sprint review, and the development team demonstrate what they have built to the invited stakeholders and the product owner to understand that this is what they expected, or they are very open to get the feedback as well. If in case there are any changes in the requirement, they need to get that added in the product backlog and then gets prioritized. And this is the whole life cycle. Once the sprint review is completed, the last event in Scrum, which is the sprint retrospective. So this is an inspect and adapt for the Scrum team itself. So when it calls Scrum team, all the 3 roles forms together a Scrum team, which nicely is being pictorially represented on the top blue kind of old section. If you see product owner, a development team, and a Scrum master forms a Scrum team. So retrospective, people discuss about what really went well in an iteration and what are the things they really need to focus on to improve and what impediments they have. And then they do take actions on priority, which needs to be solved in the immediate sprint for them to improve in a continuous cadence. And one of the event, sprint is a container event which contains all of the whole process which I have described. And one of the event which is not explicitly called as an event in Scrum Guide, which is the product backlog refinement. So product backlog refinement is an activity where development team and product owner collaborates on every iteration or a sprint, wherein no more than 10% of development team capacity is being spent. They together come across, they discuss about what priorities are, they try to understand the user stories, they work with the product owner, try to add some details more about user stories, about estimates, and then any dependencies, everything gets discussed as part of the product backlog refinement. This is about basically shaping up things for the next sprint. Yeah. So just to remind you, everyone, so this is just a Scrum in a nutshell. So there have been a fantastic session has been done for the last 11 months. Please watch out for Introduction to Agile session being hosted by Sri. He has been doing gracefully for the last 11 months, and we're going to have the 12th, which is upcoming in month of November. So watch out for the communications in UVCT. And then I bet if you are new to Agile, please, I'll highly recommend to be part of that session to give a good understanding of what Agile is and a Scrum framework is all about. So that's in a nutshell. So why did we discuss about Scrum? So as an example, as I said, we wanted to give a debrief about what definition of ready and definition of done and where it gets suited. So if you kindly look at this diagram, so what it speaks is during the sprint planning, yeah. So development team together, have kind of a checklist. I would call, I refer, and I'm referring to say as a checklist rather than kind of guidelines they have, wherein they're making sure that are we really ready to play a story in a sprint? So there are a set of guidelines which the development team together craft to make sure that they check the definition of, this user story has met the definition of ready, and then make sure that they don't get bogged away during the, course of the sprint. That's definition of ready. It's kind of an entry criteria, you may call. And 1 to 4 weeks, the sprint duration, and done is this kind of a check. This again, I would say a checklist for a Scrum team. This is basically to make sure for the development team that they craft it and they check the quality whether a particular feature or a story which has been built, which is really releasable. When I say done is releasable. So it is called as definition of done. So more towards in terms of the teams trying to build the technical excellence into definition of done, and then they get mature as and when they learn more iteration after iteration. And the outcome of a sprint, as everyone is aware, which is a potentially shippable working software. And it is, again, done is releasable, and it's up to the product owner whether he wants to release it or not. But end of the day, we need to make sure that a product, if it is not done, it is not done. So there is no compromise on the done, which will have a huge impact in terms of the quality of the software. So moving on, let's get deep dive onto definition of ready. And also, I forgot to tell you all, please grab a Post-it or a piece of paper or pen, or if you want to manage it digitally, well and good. So we're going to have some exercises as we go along the session. So it's going to be quite interesting. So we're going to have some hands-on exercise in writing the acceptance criteria or crafting the definition of ready. So just a reminder, if you don't have now, please grab a pen and a Post-it now. Right. Definition of ready. What is definition of ready? As the name suggests, if you see, this kind of list of preconditions for a product backlog items to be fulfilled to be played in a sprint. And this is one of the powerful tool. I would say this will bring good amount of results for the Scrum team when they deliver a working software. The reason because the development team together sets an expectations in terms of when do we call a user story is ready. So they set some sort of guidelines to make sure that, okay, X, Y, Z are in there before a story is being played in a sprint. The reason because this also that they wanted to avoid any rework once the story is completed. So the development team are very much cautious about what are we trying to play in a particular sprint and are we ready to move forward. But again, just to highlight about definition of ready, so don't see this as set of rules. When you put 100% rules, this become hamper the agility of the team. Rather than this should be seen as a guidelines for user story to be play ready so that we can minimize the risk rather than worrying it later point in time when we start the story in a play in a sprint. So embracing risk, team has to set of guidelines to make sure that the user stories are ready to be played in a sprint. And this is again a shared understanding between the team members, development team members, and they need to really focus on that these are not 100% rules. Don't keep as a hard criteria. then it will be get on to a sequential and approval gate process, which is not the focus of definition of ready. So definition of ready is to enable the development team to make sure that the user stories which are being played in a sprint are in a ready state to start the work, and then they can focus on building the working software rather than chasing on the requirements. There are key benefits for definition of ready as well, which I really wanted to call it out here. First and foremost is it sets consistent team expectation. Because this is, again, we are giving the opportunity for the development team to craft it. So as a team, we make them accountable in terms of what is that you say which is ready to play. So you craft that as a development team member anonymously, and then you make sure that that guideline is being set. And also, as I said, focus more on building the working software rather than chasing on the requirements, because halfway through, it's as a team's guideline. So nobody do a blame game stating like, why did we pick a sprint? Why did we pick up this user story in a sprint? And there is one of the event which does wherein we discuss about definition of ready is 3 Amigo session as well, where a developer, where a product owner or a business analyst, a proxy business analyst, and the Scrum Master facilitates that. So they all get together and then discuss about the user story. So this is one of the key event. I mean, it doesn't prescribe in Scrum, but something which I've been using in my experience, which really worked well for the team. And also it helps the team accountable in terms of the delivery as well. When I say accountable, so we are not trying to shoot someone down stating like you guys have agreed. So it's not even the product owner's role. Rather than it's kind of a guideline, the team makes sure that everyone understands what they really craft the definition of ready, what they put in to make sure the user stories are ready. So this sets a nice cadence or a flow for a Scrum team to move ahead with building a working software. Quite interestingly, Scrum Guide, so if you go to scrumguide.org, you can download the Scrum Guide, which is the two gentlemen, if you can see on the screen. So Jeff Sutherland and Ken Schwaber are the founders of Scrum. And also the good news for you, everyone. So Scrum is a new Scrum Guide has been, when I say new Scrum Guide, a revision of Scrum Guide is being done in 2020. And we are expecting that to be released in early of December. So this is the announcement which Ken has sent. So a lot more. There is still Scrum is going to be difficult to practice, but then they are trying to take some good feedback in terms of what's there in the existing Scrum Guide. They are amending some changes which they are going to release in early December. So watch out more on that space. But current Scrum Guide, which is the revised version, which was released on November 2017. So if you have a quick look through, definition of ready is not being explicitly called out in the Scrum Guide. I was wondering about it. Why is it so? Definition of done is being mentioned, but we don't have definition of ready being crafted in Scrum Guide. What could be the potential reason? So my 2 cents are the reason, because we have seen through now. So we don't want definition of ready as a 100% rule checklist for the Scrum or for development team to say that if we don't have all this, I can't play a story in a sprint. So don't make as a contract or an approval gate or a sequential phase gate. So Scrum, as I said, this is kind of a framework and a guideline. It does not prescribe or just say like you have to do this way, rather than it just is a framework. It says enables team to adopt some best practices so that they can achieve their outcome. So that is the reason they very cautiously have excluded definition of ready as one of the artifact which included as part of the Scrum Guide. So they don't want to see development team or perceive that the development team should have a definition of run kind of which goes as a contract or an approval gate or a 100% checklist, which they really wanted to avoid. So Ken and Jeff were very cautious about it. I believe that is the reason definition of ready is not been explicitly called out in Scrum Guide. So just for everyone's awareness, so Scrum Guide doesn't have definition of ready called out, but it is really a powerful mechanism for development team to make sure that whatever they play in a sprint are ready. They can have a set of guidelines being defined, and then if that's all been adhered to, then they're good to go to play a sprint, and then they build the working software. One of the key things, so I know we have been talking about definition of ready. So everyone might be wondering, okay, what are we talking about definition of ready? If I'm new to Agile in software development, and if I wanted to build a working software, what would be my starting baby step of setting up a definition of ready? So there is one of the criteria which to start with, the development team can effectively use, which is called as INVEST. So INVEST, the acronym of INVEST is independent, negotiable, valuable, estimable, small, and testable. So if any Scrum team, they really wanted to start off in crafting their definition of ready, I would regularly recommend that they start with invest, and then they can improvise on as they mature and as they learn more towards iteration after iteration. So let's quickly go through what invest talks about. When you say invest, so I starts with independent. So we need to make sure that the user story doesn't have any dependencies at all. So to make sure that the user stories are independently can be worked upon, and then the value can be delivered. N stands for negotiable. This is again, we discussed about the sprint planning, wherein the what gets discussed with the product owner in terms of the prioritization and how much the user stories can be pulled by the development team in a sprint. So we don't want that again a contract, rather than that it should be negotiable. I mean, the product owner development team should negotiate to discuss further on requirements, even though they are not 100% pretty clear, and we don't want to set kind of a contract or an approval gate on there. So it should be negotiable as well. So it doesn't mean that it can have dependencies. So as I said, first and foremost, independent talks about it should be independent, and then the development team can build some valuable software independently rather than depending on any other work. Second one is negotiable. So it's not a contract, rather than we wanted development team to collaborate with the product owner to discuss more about the requirements during the course of the sprint as well, if in case there are any. The third one, V, stands for valuable. So as the name suggests, the working software, what the development team are building, should be of value, should be of some business value. So that is one of the key criteria which product owner also prioritize his product backlog item in the product backlog. So it should be valuable. So make sure that whatever the development team is playing or working on a sprint, it should be of good value for the end users or the customers. E stands for estimable. So we need to make sure that the team completely understand what's the complexity and what are the uncertainties the team have on a particular user story which has been played in the sprint, and also how much of efforts they have, and accordingly based on which the story points can be done. So when you talk about user stories, again, a gentle reminder. So we had a fantastic session as part of the APGI webinar series, which was taken by one of the co-APGI member, was Kasi. He has done a session on user stories demystified, which is available in YouTube for your reference. Probably I'd request Sri to put that YouTube link on the chat, so for people's reference.
Yeah.
So thank you, Sri. So estimable, as everyone is aware, that it's again a complexity effort of work, and also the uncertainty involved in whatever the work which the story which the team is playing in. S stands for small. This is again, we don't want a big chunk of work to be played in a sprint, because it will end up the development team will fail to complete it, even though how good a team might be. So always user stories are smallest unit. So make sure that any user story which is really small, which can be fit into a particular sprint, and they can deliver some value. So it should be small enough to fit in a sprint. And last but not least is T, stands for testable. So make sure that every user story is testable and can be tested independently. I mean, we don't have any further dependencies. So make sure that there are the acceptance criteria, which we're going to deep dive now as well. Acceptance criteria are nothing but the requirements which we are writing it for an user story. And also it focus more on the business value. So make sure that T stands for testable, and your story, whatever you've been pulling into a sprint, which the development team really focus on, it needs to be testable as well. So to start with, highly recommend again, any Scrum team who really wanted to get on to craft your definition of ready, start with invest, and then you get mature as you go along, sprint on sprint, when you know more and learn more. So that's definition of ready and then invest model. Now, we did talk about something about that this has not been explicitly called out in Scrum Guide. So basically what happens is, we did speak about one of the event, which is not explicit event, which is called out in Scrum Guide, which is a product backlog refinement. So what it does, so Scrum Guide, it offers a great alternative for definition of ready. It's called as a backlog refinement, where the development team and product owner on a cadence on each and every iteration, they gather together. They spend no more than 10% of their time, which is again a set of guideline. If you can offer more time, absolutely fine. The more time the team is spending with the product owner to refine the backlog, it will be really good in terms of the delivery of a working software as well. So Frequent product backlog refinement within a team, and then they're working collaboratively with the product owner, really set a good cadence, and then it gets refined and more details, estimates, and any open actions, whatever needs to go on to a particular product backlog item, which is again a user story, will all be done as part of product backlog refinement. So if you see, it also says we prioritize, we estimate it, and also we add more details to each of the product backlog item which is in the product backlog. And this is all development team done in a they do in a very continuous cadence, and make sure that every product backlog item they pull in a sprint have a great value, which is of being prioritized by the product owner, and then we are creating some great valuable software at the end of every sprint as an outcome. So let's move on. So we've been talking more about definition of ready. So hope people have got pen and post-its with you. Let's set a context. So we've been talking more about definition of ready. It's again a monologue. So I have been talking a lot about definition of ready, who sets it, when does it get created, what does it all mean. So let's get on to a quick exercise. So assume during this lockdown, at least for 6 months, many people will have picked up great skills. To start with, at least I have tried my hands in cooking, which has come out really well the last 6 months when I started working from home. So this is the contest. So everyone is chef on this call, yeah. And we really wanted to make sure that we all participating in a virtual samosa making contest, yeah. And we wanted to craft a definition of ready for making samosas. So are we ready? Shall we do it? So we'll take time box of 2 minutes, and then if you can write or craft the definition of ready for making a samosa, and then let's unmute line for few of the participants on this call. Let's hear what they have to say as part of definition of ready. So time box for 2 minutes. 3.
Yeah. So I will let you know after 2 minutes. By then, if you guys can just come up with your items, that would be great.
Thank you. So put on chat as well if in case you're done with it. Probably we can unmute yourself and we can listen to you. You don't have to wait for all 20 seconds.
Okay, let's say in definition of ready in the sense as a cook, I want to write a user story first. As a cook, I would like to make samosa using maida, cooking oil, masala, and some added flavors. Acceptance criteria would be samosa should be soft and tasty. So this is what the user story I have prepared. And accordingly, the definition of ready should be my cooking oil should be, I mean, from some branded company and okay, and masala should be from some specific company, I can say. And flavors, I can get some specific company's flavors that I can say.
Okay, well crafted. Thank you, Sahu.
Yeah.
Let's hear from few more before we move on. Anyone is ready with your definition of ready for making samosas? Sorry, it's more intriguing that on a Sunday evening back in India, I mean, I'm trying to provoke to all have some hot samosas, but still, let's do this exercise.
Yeah, it's a good learning for everyone, I believe.
Great. Anyone else wanted to go? in crafting your definition of ready for samosas? Unmute the line, guys. Anyone? Anyone else to volunteer, guys? I think we have loads to cover. So let's quickly hear from one or two more, and then we can move on if you really wanted to.
Yeah, I would go for. I just drafted some DOR.
Sure.
The vessels are ready before we start making it, and corresponding ingredients are ready. It's one of them, and gas stove sufficient things are there. Like that, I drafted.
Okay. Thank you. So if you have more interesting definition of ready you have crafted, put on chat. Let's view a later point in time as well. So thank you, guys. I think hope everyone got a gist of what definition of ready is all about in terms of software development and what is it, why it is important, and what are we trying to achieve. Yeah. Thank you, Sri. So let's quickly move on to the next slide. Cool. So let's coming back to the real world of software development, wherein what are the different examples wherein you can craft for definition of ready. So there are a few things which I have listed. This is again, there is no a standard definition of ready across the industry, but these are all something whatever works best, and these are more generic ones which I have just listed out here. So well-defined user story, and the user story is having acceptance criteria defined, and they are being estimated, which is again sized by the development team, and the business value has been articulated. This is one of the definition of ready. And also you also know whom you are going to demonstrate the particular user story at end of every sprint, and whether the development team can demonstrate the user story, and in terms of user experience or artifacts, if in case there are any, are there being specifications have been defined. So this is the list example which I wanted to share for a product development when we build a working software. So quickly on a recap before we head on to the next session, next agenda or the flow of work would be acceptance criteria. So definition of ready are nothing but they are the shared understanding of the development team, which they are set as a guidelines. They are not a contract or an approval gate. So, and also they make sure that they are defining that to minimize the risk rather than and focusing more on building the working software rather than changing the requirements. And if you are new to the Scrum team, and highly recommend that you all start with invest criteria, which is again independent, negotiable, valuable, estimable, small, and testable as your definition of ready to start with, and then get mature on sprint as you know more and learn more in each iteration. So that's pretty much from definition of ready. Do you have any questions on Sri? Was there any questions on the chat, or are we good on time?
No, I think we're good on time. No questions on chat. Okay. So you please carry on. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you, Sri. All right, brilliant, guys. Let's move on. So we have seen definition of ready. This is again as a flow that this is kind of a guideline which has been set by the development team. Now, what happens next in the user story? So when we say user story, which is the smallest unit, which have some value. So acceptance criterias, they are nothing but kind of conditions wherein the software product what we are building should be met, and by the customer or the end user's perspective. And also they are unique for each and every product backlog item as well. So it is not same, it's unique for each of the product backlog item on a user story. And also always remember, the acceptance criteria are defined from the end user's perspective. So it is just not the development team's understanding, rather than it is from the end user perspective, what is the expected outcome, which is really need to be delivered for the end user. So acceptance criteria always needs to craft from that perspective. And also we also set some boundaries, because we never know that how much is enough in terms of the acceptance criteria. So make sure that it all comes in practice, as we say, but this acceptance criteria, again, we also set some boundaries in terms of what all we need to test and what negative scenarios we need to consider. For example, if you see you're entering an invalid password, So how the system should react, what is the message you should be giving to the end user. So all should be thought through in a user story, and then they are being crafted as requirements as part of acceptance criteria. And also, if you see, this is again a common understanding of the requirements for development team and the product owner as well. Because the reason why I'm saying this is because development team understand what behavior or what is that they are expected to deliver, number one. And then the stakeholders and the customer, they also know what is that they are going to get at end of that particular valuable product. And the key part is who crafts acceptance criteria. This is again, many people used to say that the responsibility of a product owner. So in my experience, of course, yes, but still, if development team collaboratively work with the product owner, and then they are involved in crafting the acceptance criteria, which will have much more value rather than we just pointing out to the product owner stating, hey, product owner, you own the product backlog, so write the user story and the acceptance criteria. So this gives lot of clarity in terms of the requirements, what is being crafted on as part of acceptance criteria for each of the product backlog item. So please remember, this is all again. So and again, we use product backlog refinement, which is one of not a formal event, but there's an activity which needs to be effectively used by the development team and product owner when they gather together, discuss about requirements, and then they add more details, and then they craft the acceptance criteria as part of product backlog refinement. Remember this rule. So always the acceptance criteria really need to be kept simple. So don't ever try to use some complex, verbatim, or which is really tough to understand, wherein you need to have an Oxford dictionary to, refer to. Have a very plain English, which the customer understands, and make sure that there is no ambiguity or there is no challenges in terms of no chaos or confusion in terms of whatever acceptance criteria has been defined. As I said, this is again, set from the end user perspective. So the rule of thumb, again, keep it simple and no room for ambiguity. Make sure that it writes in plain English, and also always make sure that it is being written from the end user's perspective. That would give the expected outcome. So there are 7 tips, or I would call as recommendations for writing an effective acceptance criteria. So let's quickly go through them. To start with, every product backlog item or a user story needs to minimum at least have one acceptance criteria. The reason because we know the user story is just the smallest unit, but then it needs to be substantiated with in terms of what is that we are going to achieve or an outcome of a user story. So we need to at least have one acceptance criteria, even however small it is, because against which we are going to have our definition of done crafted. Make sure that the user story is all met the relevant requirements, and before we mark the story as done or has been accepted by the product owner. That's the first one. Second one, make sure that the acceptance criteria are written well before the start of the implementation. The reason because, again, always have the customer focus and the customer end user perspective, have a customer intent in terms of what customer wanted to, what customer will be expecting out of this valuable software which is being delivered. So if the acceptance criteria are crafted when you start the development, so more of the development, mindset will get creep in, and then you'll be writing acceptance criteria in terms of what you have been developing, rather than will forget to focus on what exactly the customer needs. So make sure that they are defined very well ahead, rather than you start the implementation. So craft them before start of the implementation, which is highly recommended. And each of the acceptance criteria should be independent testable. So as we did seen before, as part of the invest, make sure that the user stories are independent, and also the same case goes with acceptance criteria also. So every acceptance criteria needs to be independently tested, rather than they are being having some dependency with some other user story or such. So make sure they are independent, and the development team can test them. And also the next one is it should have a clear binary of either a pass or a fail result. So this exactly gives you that whether you have completed in terms of whatever you have agreed as part of the user story being developed or not to build a valuable software. If you don't have the binary of a pass or fail result, then this again will lead to kind of an ambiguity within the development team. So make sure that every acceptance criteria, when it's been discussed with the product owner and the development team, have a clear pass fail result in place. And also the key thing is, which again I said, focus more on what is that customer need when you craft the acceptance criteria, rather than how the solution come into place. So how is something how we achieve in terms of, that's again is responsibility of the development team. But whenever an acceptance criteria has been written, think from the customer perspective, and then write them the acceptance criteria, and more towards the functional and non-functional requirements. So these are called as the conditions to satisfy, so added as appropriate. So when we talk about whether a performance testing is required, or your load testing is required, or reliability, or whatever is, so maybe in terms of a non-functional, make sure that they are all being crafted in the as part of acceptance criteria, as discussed with the product owner, in terms of when we complete a particular user story in a sprint. And last but not least, there are furthermore recommendations as well, but I would highly recommend that these are the 7 tips which found useful from my experience. The seventh one is the development team members write acceptance criteria, which again called out when we started to discuss about acceptance criteria. Make sure that the product owner and the development team collaboratively work together, and then they write the acceptance criteria for user story, rather than just pointing fingers that it's responsibility of the product owner and product owner needs to do it. So this have lot of value, that the entire development team and product owner will have a clarity in what they are achieving in terms of building the valuable product at the end of every sprint. So these are a quick 7 recommendations for everyone to follow in terms of writing an effective acceptance criteria. So heading on, so we're going to see there are 2 techniques of how well we can craft an acceptance criteria. So let's quickly run through them. So the first one is given, when, then. This is again as a scenario based, and then the second one is a rule oriented, which basically wherein we have a system level functionality needs to be tested, or a user experience or a design perspective. So that's where scenario based it's not possible. That's when we go ahead and use the rule oriented one. Yeah. So let's head on again with given, when, then. So given, when, then, this is again, people would have heard about this name. This has been inherited from the behavior driven development. So this is more about, so you're given some precondition, when I do some action, and what is that I expect some result out of it. So this is one of the behavior driven development is one of the core software engineering practices, where they encourage the teams collaboratively to use conversation as a mode, and with concrete examples they formalize the shared understanding of how exactly the application should behave. So it focuses more on in terms of where to start the process, and how much we need to test, and how do we understand whether the test is passed or failed. So that's more about, so we have inherited the acceptance criteria's format is given, when, then, which is from the behavior driven development. As you rightly see here, so there are multiple given, when, then examples. So let's quickly run through them. When you talk about the scenario, so what is the customer behavior we're trying to achieve? That's a scenario which we have written. And then given, that's a beginning state of the scenario. So what is that, the preconditions. When, whatever the actions which the user is making, then is the outcome of the action, which is mentioned in when. And then we can have and you can have multiple given, when, then followed by that as well. So this is the format which is really good in terms of scenario based instances wherein we can craft the acceptance criteria using this technique. So let's quickly check an example of a given, then format. So if you see, as a user, I want to able to recover password to my account. Yeah, so that I will be able to access my account in case I forgot the password. So assume this is a user story which we have in hand. And the scenario is forgot password. So this is a scenario. So let's quickly see how exactly the given, when, then can be crafted for this particular scenario for this user story. Given, when the user has navigated to the login page, which everyone has seen. So if you take banking a HSBC example, you log into the page, you go to the front screen, and then you click on forgot password, wherein you forgot the password. So what happens is that just the user clicks on forgot password link on that particular login page, and then what are they doing? They're entering a valid email to receive a link for password recovery. So if you have not registered, it's not a valid email, then it will not work. So we are specifically saying that enter a valid email which has been registered to receive a link for password recovery. Then what happens? The system automatically sends an email to the entered valid email address of the customer for the customer to reset the password. Then what happens again? Given the user has received the link via email, and then when the user navigated through the link, received the email, and then they have an opportunity to set a new password for the system for the particular HSBC login page. So this is one of the great example wherein you have different scenarios being crafted. You can use given, when, then. This is our very simple plain language. This is again, however your customer is experiencing his the journey, that's been well crafted as part of a given, when, then format. So let's do it again. Let's do an exercise. So this is a user story which we have at hand. So let's take 3 minutes, probably for everyone to have some practice of writing an acceptance criteria in a scenario-based given, when, then format. Shall we? So we'll have a time box of 3 minutes, if that's okay with everyone. Shall we do it? Give some chats, yes, no, maybe.
Yep. So people are up for it, Sundar. 3 minutes
Thank you.
starts now.
Thank you, Sri. So I'll read out this story for you if you're in mid of. So as a user, I want to be able to request cash from my account in automated teller machine, the ATM, so that I will be able to receive the money from my account quickly and in different places. So we're going to write given, when, then scenario for this story. So if someone have completed, please feel free to unmute and then call out what you have written in terms of given, when, then for this particular story.
Yeah, this is Prasad. Can I have?
Oh, go ahead, please.
Yeah, the givens in a given user story, when the account is having the balance or a money or a cash, what we can claim it as, and the card what we have shown is the original card or probably the actual card what we have entered into the ATM machine, and the dispenser ATM machine or ATM as a dispenser, cash dispenser should be having the appropriate amount of cash. When the customer is requesting for a cash from the ATM machine, then ensures that the account is debiting or would get debited the amount which is requested by the customer, and ensures that the customer would ask for the receipt of the transaction.
Brilliant. Good one. Thank you, Prasad.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Can I have a try?
Yep.
Yeah, so it's given that I have funds in my account, when I enter my PIN and the amount I want to withdraw, then I should be able to receive cash.
Perfect. Good one.
May I go with one?
Yep.
Okay. Given I have $100 in my account, when I try to withdraw $200, then I will be shown an error message that I have insufficient fund.
Perfect. It's a good scenario. Thank you. Any more from anyone?
There's one on chat.
Sure.
Sorry, Ravi. Go ahead. Then at last I'll go down.
Okay, thanks. Given as an account holder in the bank, in our bank, and when enter my debit card in ATM, then enter an amount and ATM pin and amount, then check the balance, authenticate the user, and check the balance if available, and then dispatch the amount. This is a positive scenario.
Sure.
As Kasiv said, that is a negative scenario. Similar case I have written. When there is no sufficient balance, then show the error message, something like that.
Perfect. Thank you, Ravi. Any final one or two, if you guys have written, do you want to call out any other different scenarios?
Yeah, I can give.
Yep.
Given my ATM card, I would be able to log into my ATM machine that is given when I have to enter my ATM pin and I have to choose the amount where I would like to withdraw. Then the system should be able to give the amount from my account, whatever I have chosen.
Okay. Perfect. Any last one? Let's go with one more, if anyone has. Okay. If not, brilliant, guys. I think everyone is going to become a product owner. I think you all have been crafting the acceptance criteria really well. Good job, everyone. Thanks, everyone, for making efforts in writing the given when then for this particular user story. Brilliant. Let's move on to the final leg of the session, which is nothing but, sorry, we have to see one more type, which is the rule-oriented checklist. So this is again a second type wherein we need to craft the acceptance criteria. This more talks about the system level functionality, because the given when then scenarios doesn't fit very well in terms of describing the design or the user experience of a particular feature. For example, let's take, if there is a web page wherein you have a search field, or probably you have a radio button. So basically, when we specify exactly where, what field, and what action they need to perform, those are system level defined feature, which the scenarios we can't have a given then when format. So in this scenario, we can go ahead with list of rules. So rules will be much more easier. It's a straightforward one. Whether you have a radio button, when you click on it, whether that gets checked, when you click again, whether that's get unchecked. So this is kind of one of the scenario to write acceptance criteria wherein it does not very well fit in terms of a scenario or a customer behavior, rather than more to do with the user design or experience. We have to go ahead in following the rule oriented checklist. So this is one of the way wherein we can craft the acceptance criteria for a user story as well. So moving on, so there are furthermore in terms of we can all have some custom formats of how exactly we can define the acceptance criteria, but these are very well known ones which is being used wide industry. So remember, so we have two types. One is given when then, which is inherited from the behavior driven development, and the other one is the rule oriented, which is basically a checklist type of to validate the system. So quick recap on acceptance criteria. So now everyone is aware. So what acceptance criteria are? So they are nothing but the requirements which as for a user story, and they are very unique for each of the product backlog item, and they set the boundaries for it. And also acceptance criteria are written from the end user perspective. And who writes acceptance criteria? So now everyone is aware that the product owner and the product development team collaboratively work together, probably in a product backlog refinement. They add more details to a user story, and then they estimate, and then they keep improvising on as every product backlog refinement as part of a top prioritized items of product backlog item. And this is again, when does they've been crafted for a user story? As I said, this is again a product backlog refinement. So that's an event wherein they gather together, they have an opportunity to look at the product backlog prioritized list, and then they discuss with the product owner to shape up things for the upcoming sprint. And what are the different techniques which we have very well seen, and then we had some hands-on experience as well, which is the given when then from behavior driven development, and then the rule oriented or the checklist. Moving on to the final leg of definition of done. So of the session, which is definition of done. So as we touch based on where exactly definition of done gets fit for a user story, we are making sure that the development team understand how do we measure that the whatever we build thing is right, and then when it is complete. So that is something which is being defined as a definition of done, and this has been explicitly mentioned as one of the artifact in Scrum guide. So this is what the Scrum, I have just got the experts from the Scrum guide, which I have mentioned for you. So this brings more of transparency for the development team as well, because this is a shared understanding of what it means for a work to be complete, and everyone in the team should be completely understanding what done means for them for a particular feature to be delivered by end of every sprint. And the development team will be crafting the definition of done if in case the organization as a whole doesn't have any set of guidelines being set for the quality definition. If the organization doesn't have, every Scrum team needs to craft their definition of done to make sure that the quality they deliver quality product by end of every sprint when it is being released to the customer. And also the great benefit is the team gets accountable, and also they really see that they really wanted to build some technical excellence as they move on. To start with, they'll be going with 80% of code coverage, and then they say all the unit tests passed, we have all the functional requirements have been completed. If in case NFT or pen testing or non-functional testing like performance, everything is crafted. That's these kind of set of guidelines which development teams have to make sure that they say they get a stamp that this whatever user story which has been built is ready to be released to production. And this is again, whenever product owner thinks that he wanted to release, he can release, but it's a responsibility of the development team that when it is done, it is done, it is releasable. We cannot compromise on definition of done at all, because this is one of the highest way of building quality sprint on sprint within the Scrum team. Yeah. There are three main components when we talk about it. What are the things which we more focus on, definition of done. So there are three things. One is the business requirements or the functional requirements. One is the non-functional requirements. This is again comes to all the performance, load testing, usability, whatnot, all the things which comes in non-functional. And then one is the building the high quality. So basically, if the technical excellence is not been involved, what happens? Quality becomes at stake. You'll have a lot of rework to be done. If more of technical debt creeps into your product, it will be costing really more for you to further rework them in a later point in time, and then obviously the cost will really rocket shoot up, and product owner will not have funds to do it, and then the product becomes stagnant, and then no value gets generated. So make sure the development team thinks about the quality product which they want to build in, and these are the main three components when you think about definition of done, to craft a definition of done. So business or functional requirements, as said, this is again for each and every user story. So there are functional requirements, which is again crafted as part of acceptance criteria. So these are the standard business requirements or rules or whatever the feature is deemed to do so in building a working software, and what is the value which the product is going to, or the feature is going to bring in for the particular product, and then they are written in form of the user stories. This is the first component. Second component, as we just discussed, so technical excellence is really key for every Scrum team to craft the definition of done, because the good quality they have, quality will really become free at certain point in time, that if the development team keep on thinking about how exactly they make quality good at quality product end of every iteration, so quality will by default becomes free at some point when you have a stringent definition of done in place. And also there is no room for technical debt to creep on, which all gets addressed as part of your retrospective, where the team gather together, they refine what definition of done they have for the particular sprint. If they really think that needs to be revised and updated, they do so, and then they just move on to the next sprint, iteration after iteration. So quality, as I said to start with, these are some examples which I have mentioned here. So unit test coverage, if there is any standard coding way of guidelines in terms of how exactly you need to do coding, that's again added as definition of done. And make sure that we don't have any known defects or probably high priority defects at end of every sprint. So make sure that the user story can't be marked as done. So as I said, we can't compromise on definition of done. If it is not done, it is not done. And make sure that technical debt is one of the key things. Make sure that doesn't there, that you don't leave any technical debt when you build a working software on a user story sprint on sprint.
Yeah, can I ask one question? Sorry.
There you go. Sure, no problem.
Yeah, can you explain with an example what a technical debt means?
Absolutely. So technical debt are nothing but, for example, you're building a solution. Yeah. So you're working on something to, for example, X product is there. You're trying to code something. Yeah. There are two ways to do it. One is a strategic solution. One is a tactical solution. Yeah. Mm-hmm. When I say tactical solution, which will give you the benefit for the short term. So it will really meet your product customer needs. And then within the given time frame, you'll be able to achieve it in the particular sprint. And then you go ahead with a tactical solution. But what happens is when a tactical solution has been done and then a product has been built, absolutely fine for that particular period. The product owner will be happy because whatever the feature which needs to be delivered will be delivered, and the end user will be accessing it. But on a longer term, if this strategic solution is not been implemented, it will have its own cause and effects, which will end up in a lot of rework. And if it's not been sorted at the first place, so this is, and it will cost a lot of rework at later point in time. So this I refer as a technical debt.
Okay.
This
Got
is
it.
more about building in quality within a system. You don't give any room for causing any tech debt, or probably what to say, not the right behavior of coding, or what do you
Some
say? So
quick fixes and all, right?
yes, don't go for straight, some hacks. Go for a proper solution so that it'll benefit in the longer run.
Okay.
Okay, cool. Moving on to the non-functional requirements, so which I've just touched upon. So we have various non-functional requirements. So whatever is deemed required for your particular product really need to be thought about. So just again with input from your product owner and based on the feedback from the end user and customer. So these all play a vital role. So these non-functional requirements directly does not add value to add more to business value, but then these attributes, without these attributes, the product or the will be null or void. So when I say performance, so everyone would like to, when you click on something, you should have a good response time. So the performance should be good and it should be reliable. So where exactly they are hosting it, whether they're highly available, are they in cloud or on-premise data. So all these been discussed in terms of scalability. For example, there are some beautiful stats have been published as part of the Amazon Prime Day. So I mean, if you have a chance, go to Amazon.com and see Jeff Barr's statistics. There's been massive amount of example they have given in terms of the Amazon Prime Day, how many systems, how much terabytes of data, how much of storage being used. So they've been excellently done well. Not even a single chaos has been observed. So they were all really proud in terms of how the system is really being scalable. So in massive of like how many millions of users have been accessing as part of the Prime Day. And availability, I said, all should be available. There should not be any downtime for the customers. This again, as I said, it depends on the product and the product owner and how exactly they wanted to satisfy the customer needs. And usability, which is again, we have to think about how good is that the product being used by the customer. And also one thing which I've not mentioned here is accessibility again. So you have to be mindful about it is accessible for everyone. So we have all blindness, color blindness guys, and a lot of people are there. So make sure that whatever you build, might be a whatever product, they're all been accessible, and all these non-functional requirements should be thought through, and then they should be added to the definition of done. So there are definition of done. This again I've given some references as well. That's where I have taken this. I'll share this as well. So when you start with, as I said, initial definition of done, when a new Scrum team is being formed, don't go full-fledged with other matured Scrum teams. Whatever works best for you, for the respective development team, as a development team, discuss together and then craft definition of done. And also, as mentioned earlier, if the organization has specified a set of guidelines for a definition of done, as a minimum, that should be followed. If not, it is the responsibility of the development team to craft their own definition of done for every user story. Yeah, and then if you see, so initial definition of done we have, and then you have as a sprint on sprint, you learn more, you are understanding more about the product, and then you're making some stringent definition of done, and then see, it grows more. There is no sky is the limit. Basically, you can have whatever can define if the entire development team is agreeing to it. If you're bringing in quality, as I said, the quality will become free as you sprint on sprint, we deliver the working software when you have a stringent definition of done. So quick recap. So what are the components of definition of done? We have seen this is business or functional requirements, and then we have the non-functional requirements, and then the quality, which is again focusing on more technical excellence. Who defines the definition of done? If organization have one, as a minimum has to be followed. If not, the definition of done has to be crafted by development team for every product backlog item. But again, which I said wrong. So definition of done is common for all the product backlog item. So that's when the difference between acceptance criteria and definition of done comes in picture. So acceptance criteria are unique for every product backlog item or a story, but definition of done is common for all of your product backlog item, which is in the product backlog, which sets a quality or a standard to make sure that when we consider a work is complete. And when does definition of gets reviewed? So said during a retrospective, which is an event for the Scrum team to get together, where product owner, Scrum master, and the development team gather together, discuss about the process, and also they discuss about the definition of done, what they have set for a particular sprint. If in case it needs to be reviewed, as a team, as a shared understanding, they modify it, and then they let the product owner say, hey, product owner, this is what we're going to do. And one of the benefits of definition of done is it also helps the development team to identify how much of work they can pull into a particular sprint. That's one of the key benefit, because with a stringent definition of done, the development team will definitely know how much they can do. If you ask a developer, you want to build a web page with 2 radio buttons, probably they say 3 hours. And then if you go and ask the same developer, ask like how much efforts it would take for you to demonstrate to a user, you write the unit test and you have to do the non-functional testing, obviously it varies. So make sure that the definition of ready is very key for every Scrum team, and it has to be defined for and make sure that every story has definition of done met before it is being released to the customer. And then when does increment considered as done? So if all the parameters which is defined by the development team is met, that's when the user story is considered to be done. So if there is any partial thing which is still outstanding, never ever compromise that with product owner or the development team as well. So no one should compromise it. If it is not done, it is not done, and take the learnings and then improvise on reviewing the definition of done furthermore in the later point in time. So these are the references which I have looked through, and then images taken from Google as well. So that's all. I'm pretty much done. So now opening up for question and answers if you have any. No further questions. I really wanted to take the opportunity to thank again APGI and all the opportunity being provided. And you've been a great audience together today. Hope you all found some value in the session, and keep watching out. There have been multiple sessions upcoming. I'll just hand this over to Sri now. Thanks again. Thanks for your time. Over to you, Sri.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Sundar. That was absolutely, really insightful, because that is where we all kind of tumble upon in our daily jobs in terms of understanding what is definition of ready, definition of done. It is extremely deceiving. The meaning when we say definition of ready, when people will think that it's something which is due to which is checked to ready to go to production, but ideally that's not the case. So thank you for kind of taking us through those and really helping us understand and clear the confusions around DOR, DOD, and acceptance criteria. I personally liked the way you gave an example of an Indian eatery, which apparently is becoming a famous eatery in the UK as well, which is samosa, where you took us through that example and asked people to come up with their definition of readies, definition of dones, and acceptance criteria, which is a great way of learning. So thank you very much. Really insightful session this afternoon. Thank you. In terms of the next session, somebody just opted that up in chat. So DOD, DOR, and acceptance criteria, that's something which happened today. That's done now. And the next session is on Agile software engineering. So what you need to do is to go on uvct.com, where you registered for this session. As and when I create these sessions on UVCT, you will get an email. So if you're connected with me on UVCT, as soon as I publish new sessions, you will get an email saying Sri has created this new session, and it will give you a registration link as well. You click on that and register yourself. You don't get a Zoom link right then, but when you get the Zoom link is when you have 60 minutes prior to the session. You get a link, you click on that link, and you're straight in like you are today. Okay. The next one is on the 8th of November, which is on Agile software engineering. And then comes Agile estimation on November 29th. In between, as Sundar also mentioned, I run my own introduction sessions to Agile for people who are new to Agile, who wants to embrace the journey and get on with it. So that's the session which I have. That's a 3-hour session. Unlike today, it's a complete comprehensive session where I give you a bird's eye view of different concepts of Agile. And for people who are just starting their journey, that would be a good session. Yeah, that's again on UVCT. You can watch out for that and register or refer your friends to that and colleagues to that. That would kind of be of a great help. All right. Any questions on how to get on with it or any such things? No. Last but not least, before I let you go, it is very important for everybody to understand how well they did, what did not go so well in the session, etc. More or less like a retrospective for us facilitators and the speakers. As soon as you finish this session, you have a review on that same UVCT link. When you go to the session, it'll ask you to review the session. Please review your session by giving a star rating there, 1 to 5, 5 being the best, 1 being needs improvement. There is also text box below that, which will help us. If you chuck a couple of lines in to state, this is where I liked your session, this is where you need to improve, etc. That will help us retrospect and possibly improve the quality of delivery and quality of the content for future sessions. All right, this recording will be made available on YouTube APGI channel. So if you have not subscribed, please go ahead and subscribe the channel so that you will get updates as and when we start updating those. And we are on we are on Insta, we are on Twitter, we are on YouTube, and we have our own website called apgionline.com. So if you go there, you get access to all the social media channels. Please go ahead and subscribe accordingly so that you will get all the updates from APGI. So we have Nurul Amin asking, do you have any WhatsApp group which will help collaboration? We don't have a WhatsApp group, but we have what we call as a Telegram group, very similar to WhatsApp. If you go ahead and ping me on this number, which I've just now shared, go ahead and ping me on this. I'll ensure that I'll add you, whoever it is, all members who are interested to continue to contribute towards the community. If you want to speak in a similar forum like these, you have content which you have to share the knowledge, then this is the forum. We will give you the stage for you to talk, and just go ahead and ping me and ask me to add you, and I will add you in. All right. Any other questions before we close? Anybody? No? If no, then I leave it at that. Have a nice evening ahead. Enjoy your festival dinner. And thank you for joining in again. Being a festival in India, it is great to see the turnout. So thank you very much for joining in, and hope you all staying safe. Thank you.
Thank you.